When I was last working on the bike, I had come to the point that I was trying to fit the original Honda petcock on the Suzuki tank and trying to figure out the best way to do that. But I'm glad I didn't go any further with it and succeed, because it occurred to me that I should probably measure where this would mount on the Suzuki tank and see, how it would fit on the bike. And it turns out this is way too long, and it actually hits the engine. It's at least ½ an inch too long to where it interferes. So I got on eBay, spent a whopping, I think, $10 and got this guy, which is considerably shorter. Now, the first thing I'm noticing here is the filter on the end of this new petcock is just a little too big to actually fit in the opening. So I'm gonna just grind a little bit on either side to where this actually fits in there in the center, and I'm not too worried about getting any dust or dirt or debris from grinding right here, because I still got to blow this tank out and get it all cleaned up. I already got rid of the rust, but you can still shake it and hear some loose stuff in there that I'll have to get rid of anyway before I actually put gas in it. And whatever gets left behind, haha, filter. Awesome. Now, the next thing I'm going to address is the fact that this was originally an oval hole, which it didn't need to be for this new petcock that I bought. And our gasket goes along this oval shape and crosses over right here and here, and the gasket is actually still in pretty good shape. But we have some issues here where I believe this space from here to here between the bolt holes is actually really close to the same width as this. So what I'm going to do is, out of a really thin piece of metal, cut another, like a metal gasket or a washer, if you will, shaped exactly like the base of the petcock, and only make the holes in it as small as they absolutely need to be. So that way it fills in all of our extra gap here that we don't really need. So when you put it all together, it should actually make a good seal between the petcock and the gasket. So on to that. I just found this piece of scrap galvanized steel, and I'm going to drill a hole dead center of it so that way I can put the petcock through it and then trace around it and make a pattern. Clearly going to need some washers for these bolts, but I think this petcock actually came with some. Well, the only washers I could locate were either too small or too big, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this together as kind of a proof of concept anyway. And I can always go back and make things a little more pretty after the fact. But my main concern is just to get this sealed off where it bolts in. I don't want any leaks coming out there. So what I'm gonna do is put my small washer on, and then a rubber washer, and then a large washer to kind of seal everything up here. I don't want any gaps. Not exactly pretty or ideal, but it'll work for right now. Now I got to get these carbs back off of there and go ahead and start hooking up the hoses, and probably just set up a bottle or something to feed them. And that way I can actually start this thing long enough to get it running right. As it is, all I've ever done is just started it off of whatever gas was in the bowl here, and it just ran for, you know, a minute or two. Well, not even a minute or two, just, you know, 10, 15 seconds at the most. And I can go ahead and cut some line to go to both carburetors into a T adapter, so that way it can eventually go up to the tank. And I'll probably use some clear hose so I can see what's going on. But all of this, like I said, is just kind of proof of concept. Get it laid out this way, and then I can make it permanent with some nicer stuff and good clamps and whatnot. But right now we just want to get it running long enough to really mess with it and see if there's any other issues and make sure that it's going to run right. 10 snips for cutting hose? Why not? Let's see. And like I said, once I get it all up and running and everything, I can replace all this setup with some nicer stuff. Like for my T adapter that's plastic, I would replace that with like a stainless steel one. And right now I'm just holding everything together with friction, with no clamps. But it won't stay that way in the final assembly. Actually, no, I don't need any help, cat. Cat, seriously. Really? All right, I've got everything hooked up here loose. The choke, throttle cables. So now I just need to hook a hose up here and feed it some gas. I've got to rebuild this starter motor. Whew. Well, she's still a runner. Just a little rough around the edges. I really need to do some work to adjust that high idle. I think I have too much tension, like pre-tension on the throttle cables, which is holding the throttle open, because it doesn't look like my set screws here are exactly touching. They're actually lifted up a little bit, so I'll correct that and see what happens next. All right, now let's give this another shot now that I've made some adjustments. See if we can get it going without the use of starting fluid. Make sure we got some gas in it. Always helpful. My motorcycle life support system isn't working that well. I need to really have the bottle hanging up higher. And there's no ventilation on the bottle, so it's having trouble feeding it. Let's see what happens. Put it on choke. That's a good sign. I think we ran out of gas, but I think we proved the concept. I was having to kind of goose it a bit to keep it idling, but just feathering the throttle around, we can get it to idle. So I think when the time comes, these can be adjusted out, a lot better, obviously, and getting it to run right and idle should not be an issue. And it'll probably help to have the air filters on here too, to provide just a little bit of resistance as well. So I think as far as running, we'll call it officially running, obviously, because we just heard it. Yeah. Now that that's all pretty much sorted out, I just got to figure out what I want to play with next. So I decided the next step would be to get this thing cleaned up, because you can't paint dirt, nor can you polish it. Now is when I assess what can be repaired or restored and what needs to be replaced. After taking a good look at these rims, they have pretty much had it. There's zero chrome left and it's eaten all the way into the metal. So new rims and spokes will be on the shopping list. Missing a rear foot peg here, but I still haven't decided whether I'm even going to keep these or not. I might end up lopping this whole thing off of here and grinding away where it was and making it look like these were never there. I think when I get my seat situation figured out, what I'm going to use, that might determine whether I keep those or not. The chrome on these shocks has absolutely had it. And they've got some dents in them. So those will probably get replaced rather than restored. The stock exhaust, the mufflers at least, are gonna go and get replaced with probably just some shorty mufflers or something like that. I was looking at this rust on the forks here, and it's pretty much eaten all the way through into the metal. So I'll probably end up just cleaning that up and getting some gaiters for it, which I kind of like the look of the chrome there, but it's too far gone over here and can't be saved. There's no chrome left. These things are just ugly. I'll get those replaced. The grips, of course, are gonna go. They're really old and like hard as a rock and look pretty terrible. So that's the short shopping list for now. Oh, and that horn's got to go too. It doesn't even work anymore anyway. And I'll have to get a new ignition switch. Lots of things to buy, but there's lots to do that doesn't really cost anything, like cleaning up the frame and getting it painted and cleaning up that engine and getting it polished. Fun stuff. Tedious but fun. And I will not be removing the engine to paint the frame. That is way more of a nightmare than I want to deal with. So I'm going to end up painting around it, which has its own host of problems, but I welcome the challenge. It'll be fun. Since I'm not going to be taking the engine off the bike to paint the frame, I am going to go through and take off everything that I can just to get the frame a little bit more exposed, get rid of all of these zip ties and everything, so that way I can manipulate the cables and kind of get them out of the way. World's dullest wire cutters. That took a second. Although this little storage container is actually pretty cool. You can open it up and stash things in there, the registration papers or whatever. I do think I'm going to remove it and leave it off though, just because I want it to look a little cleaner in here. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to go so far as to actually delete the battery and go to a different system, but I can at least get rid of this without, losing anything other than a little bit of convenience of having a place to stash stuff. But I'm not too worried about it, so it's gonna go. Now, this hose has actually been pinched behind the case over the clutch cover. So I think I'm gonna have to actually take this off because I can't get a socket on that because there's not enough room. First thing to come off will be the shifter. Which I've never had much luck getting these things off quickly. They always pose a pain. Ah, there we go. Awesome. Now to try to get these screws out of here that have probably been in there for 50 years, 49 as it is. I'm not even going to try to fool with these, getting them out without just going straight to the impact screwdriver. Easy peasy. There. Now I can get this hose out of the way. I'm going to remove this chain guard off of here permanently because it is actually broken anyway, so it's going to go. So this vent hose has completely had it. It's just, yep, completely ripped off at the end. So that's easy to uninstall. All right, now I'm gonna get the rear wheel off of there to make it easier to get access to all of this stuff for painting. Oop, that's not where I wanted to be. I'm gonna start off by loosening and removing the rod for the rear brake. And spacer number 2. There we go. Now time for a little bit of show and tell. I haven't really worked on the bike in a while, but I have been collecting some new parts for it here and there. Say new boot for the brake master cylinder. Some new headlight brackets. We'll see if those work out or not. I picked up a brake master cylinder rebuild kit. So that'll be fun. I also got a new ignition switch with key. And I picked up a brand new horn, some new main fuses for the battery, as well as a couple cone style air filters for the carburetors. And last but not least, I picked up a seat. This was actually only $20 on eBay. Didn't really know what to expect for 20 bucks, but it'll definitely work from now. It's not that bad at all. And it came with mounting brackets. Now, before doing any prep work and painting on the frame, I've got to get the seat where it can be mounted. And the first thing I'll need to do is get rid of this bracketry and whatnot from the original seat, because I won't be reusing that, and it'll just be getting in the way of the new seat and holding it up, as well as this back part that's going to get lopped off, and I'll just weld some new steel tubing to match the new seat and the new taillight assembly, which reminds me, I forgot to include that in the show and tell. This was only like 15 or 20 bucks also on eBay, where it's integrated tail lights and turn signals, running light, and a bracket for the license plate. Start lopping some of this stuff off of there. I'm gonna cut these off because I'm not gonna be using the side covers on here. Now I've got the tank positioned approximately where it's going to go. So now I can lay this seat on here and get an idea of where this is going to get lopped off in the back. Well, it's looking like I should just lop these off right in front of where the bracket for the shock attaches right here. Lop it off there on both sides, and then take some 1-inch tubing to fit onto there and have it match the contour and the curvature of the rear of the seat. All right, it's actually 2 days later now, because it was more of a pain just for me to get a piece of 1-inch round tubing, way more than I thought it would be. But I've got it now, so I'm gonna go ahead and lop these ends of the bars off right here, just behind the bracketry that holds on the shock absorbers. So I'm gonna lop them off. All right, now I'm just going to measure the curve of this seat from one of these cut ends to the other. And it's actually just over 12 inches, but I would actually cut the bar to 13, because I can always lop a little off the ends, but you can't really put it back after it's gone. So I think I might actually be able to make this work. It'll take a little work, but I think it might be worth it. So I'm gonna give it a go. I think I might be able to make that work. Some welding, some grinding. It's worth a shot. All right, so my camera battery died, my microphone battery died, and then it got late, and it's actually 3 days later. So all you really missed is me welding the piece that I made onto the bike, but you really didn't miss much because I don't weld very well. So anybody that actually knows how to weld, I saved you the pain of watching me do it, because you probably would be squirming in your seat if you saw what I was doing. So anyway, it is welded on solid now, and I've gone over it with some body filler and been sanding on it and stuff just to kind of smooth everything out. And that is where I'm at to this point, and I'll be going and adding some body filler and doing some grinding on all these other spots where I lopped off some of the extra bits and pieces that I didn't need. And that is the agenda for the afternoon. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you already haven't, and hit the notification bell so you'll know when the next part of the series comes out. And until next time, see ya.